Welcome. Happy Monday. We have our amazing Jen here with us today to talk about UTMs, which I'm so excited about because I feel like we mention it a lot and I feel like I randomly talk about it a lot, but I'm always so surprised. Okay, everyone's saying it's working great, great. Hi guys. I'm always so surprised how many of us don't actually know about this. Like I was at a mastermind thing recently and I was kind of saying it very generally and quite a few people were like, what is a UTM? And I was like surprised that so many people don't know this. I think we kind of take it for granted sometimes. So no problem if you don't know it, but that's like what today is about. Like, let us help you understand what that is. Let us help you make them work for you. I'm going to try very hard to make sure Jen doesn't tell you 500 steps of how to do that, but gives you a general overview. um, she was like, well, am I going to teach them the whole thing in this training? I was like, maybe later. That is so you. Okay, so if you're here and you don't know what those are, we will tell you. But first, two things. One is if you're here and comment at all, we love to reward that for joining us and listening to us. So we're going to give away our Tag Your Traffic program, which basically is teaching you how to use UTMs completely. So if you want that, make sure just to give us like a little comment or love today. And then, hey, Michelle, hey, Morgana, hey, Jess, Julie, I'm so happy y'all are here. And then otherwise, if you have questions around this, feel free to drop them. Like no question is a dumb question on this topic at all. And then also, Jen, do you want to, I feel like everyone knows you, but you want to just give a little intro?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Jen. I'm the co-CEO with Lacey at Datable, where we teach. I always try to say this more concisely so I don't go down like a rabbit hole, but we help female online business owners better understand their data so that they can make more confident decisions. I spent a lot of time doing like this measurement marketing type of work. Prior to that, I did a lot of online operations and was behind the scenes in a lot of 7 and 8 figure businesses. I also have a pretty extensive corporate background and corporate day job that I do alongside this. I have 2 little girls, and yeah, I tend to be a little bit of a nerd. And little is probably the wrong way of saying that. So Lacey, if this is your first time joining a call with me, you'll see Lacey has to, rein me in quite a bit.
It's why we love her and why she is the best at what she does. Okay, so I don't like I never even remember what UTM stands for, Jen. Do you even know? I'm sure
I
you
do.
do now because you're like you just were like writing about it, but like yeah.
I do, but it's one of those things that almost makes it worse. I will tell you
It
all.
totally makes it worse.
But know that it like is totally irrelevant. I've literally written a book on UTM parameters, and I don't even explain the like what UTM stands for in the actual book because that is how irrelevant it is. But it stands for Urchin Tracking Module. And the only reason it stands for that is because there was a company that founded it that was named Urchin. And so they called it a tracking
I
module.
didn't know that. That makes sense. Okay.
Google acquired Urchin. And so it just became, they kept the term because it was already, everybody was already using the language UTM parameter. And so again, completely the tracking module piece makes sense, right? It's a little module that tracks data about the visit. But yeah, I always laugh when people ask me, someone just asked me that about the book recently. And I was like, oh, you don't want to know because it makes it sound so much more confusing and like it's totally irrelevant.
It really does. But I also think it's like helpful to name that because then it doesn't feel like this mysterious thing. Like I didn't even know the urchin thing came from that, which obviously that makes sense. But yeah, so basically the point, let's just cut to the chase. The point of having a UTM is what? And then we'll explain what it even is in terms of like logistically what that looks like.
Yeah. So the point of having a UTM is so that Google Analytics, which is like the primary tracking tool, although I do believe that most analytic tracking tools, for those of you that would use an alternative to Google Analytics, I know that seems foreign to me because I am such a Google person, but I know that there are tools out there that other people leverage. I do believe universal, it's like pretty universal that UTM parameters are collected by all of those, but I could be mistaken there. But the goal is it gives Google or your tracking system more information around the visit, where the visit came from, and greater specificity. Like most of the time, Google, I would say about honestly, anywhere from like 40 to like 70% of the time, Google doesn't actually know where the traffic came from. Like it's not even going to say Facebook generically. It doesn't know. And the times that it does know, it's very generic. It just says Facebook. But there's like 6 ways you can market on Facebook, right? Like there's like, and when I say market, I just mean share a link. Like you could do it in a DM, you could do it via a story, you could do it on a post on your profile or a post on your page or a post in a group. And if it's in a group and which post. And so just knowing it came from Facebook is like not actually that useful when we're in a world where there are so many ways to share within one platform and you're trying to make strategic decisions about where to invest your time within those platforms.
Totally. And I think that that feels, I think, to so many people like information we could never access almost. Like it's like I think for a lot of us, it feels like, well, I could never know if that sale came from my stories or a post or whatever. And like why UTMs are such a game changer is because you actually could know all of that. And I think like obviously we talk about this all the time and believe in that, but like the power of knowing that is so vast in your marketing. Like it is everything in some ways to be able to say like, oh, my stories not only send the most people to my page, but they actually get me the most sales. Or interesting, my stories aren't sending any traffic to my page right now, but I'm spending the vast majority of my time on them. Why aren't they working? What's going on there? This is the kind of stuff I feel like that is always mind blowing to me that it doesn't get like you could go buy whatever 90%, probably way more than that, of online marketing courses out there and they won't mention UTMs.
No, yeah, it's fascinating. Like I just don't understand. And it's not like they're super time consuming to do. Like you've done it. It takes you maybe an extra 30 seconds, 60 seconds to just take the minute to like change the link to a UTM link. Like it's not hard and it's not time consuming. So I genuinely do not understand why more people aren't talking about it. Because
I mean, at best, it's slightly annoying.
yeah.
I remember one of my friends recently was like, oh, because her team took Measure and Maximize, and she was like, oh my God, I could kill you. All my team does is message me about which UTM link I should be using today. And she was like teasing me about it. But then she was like, no, but honestly, it's like so worth it. Like it's the best thing ever. And so it's one of those things that's like in the moment, does it slow you down like a fraction? Of course, like it takes an extra minute. You have to grab the right link, whatever. Over time, it speeds up your business completely because you actually know what all of that time is worth and where it's going. And I think that that's such like a measure of us business owners right now to a certain extent, where like the annoyance of something that takes 60 seconds, we like write off and don't have bandwidth. But then we're like, but I can't make any qualified decisions, or like, I actually don't know why this is working or not. And it's just so funny how that's how the online space is teaching most people how to operate.
Yeah. And if you see me looking down, it's because I took so many notes about something yesterday and like this kind of thing totally came up. It was like, just the amount of things that like you're willing to do to not do something that's perceived as hard, but you're like spending so much more time doing things to avoid that. It's like, it's so hilarious. And just such a great like summary of our industry right now.
Yeah. Hey, Lacey, she said, oh gosh, I'm so overwhelmed by UTMs, but so true. I get so frustrated with lack of traffic info. It's both, right? I think like it's one of those things where like both can be true. Like they are annoying. Like I will say objectively, like they are annoying. And the minor annoyance of it has always paid off for me personally. Like I've never been like, oh man, I'm really sad I wasted X amount of time using the right UTM link. Like I feel like it's like the gym scenario where like it's really annoying to go to the gym, but I've never gone to the gym and been like, oh, I'm so mad I spent time on that. You know what I mean?
100%. I've never had someone come back and be like, doing all of this was a waste, or like, I regret having spent the time on that. Like, I've seen people mess it up and they're like, oh my God, I'm so mad at myself because I just deployed this the wrong way because I missed something silly because I didn't test or whatever. I've seen that. I've never had someone come back and be like, I'm so mad I have all this really good information that I can now use to make better decisions in my business. Like,
Totally. totally. Yeah. Like Chris was saying, the time it takes to set up the process is worth it. And which is like almost everything in business. Like every single thing that I have that's like paying off for me on a greater scale was objectively annoying to set up at the beginning. So I think it's just helpful to say like that's normal if you think about UTMs or if you hear like the idea that you'd have to like use different links for different things and it sounds like, oh my gosh, cannot compute. I get it, but honestly, there's like a very easy way to do that. And I also think that sometimes what happens with UTMs, I'll just say this from like personal experience and client experience, is that once you know what you can UTM, some people try to do everything and that's what makes them crazy. Is like, because it's one of those things where it's like you can take that pretty far. Like
Yeah.
right. And so I feel like a lot of people do that at the beginning. They're like, oh, I could know every single ounce of detail on this. And so all of a sudden their UTM spreadsheet is like, whatever, 50 links deep or something. That is overwhelming as fuck.
Yeah.
But like so few of the businesses in our space need that level of detail to successfully like utilize this. And so I feel like that's for me, like the sticking point for a lot of people is it's almost like such an all or nothing mentality. And I feel like Jen, the way you and I use it is so middle ground to that, you know?
I think people are surprised by how we use it when they see it. Cause I think people assume that we like take it so far to the extreme. And it's like, no, honestly, we don't want like we will collect more information if we determine it's an area that we need more information. But like which link in an email they click on, I just want to know which email they came from. Like we are not to say we might never want to know that. Like at some point it might make sense for us to start tracking that level of detail, but it's like right now it doesn't. Like right now we're looking for like the bigger buckets, and then maybe if down the road we realize like, oh, I'll give an example, like, oh, our cart abandoned sequence is doing really well and we want to figure out like where to make small tweaks, then yeah, maybe we would go in and update some of the UTMs to get a little bit more data there. But like that's like in an iterating, refining down the road phase. And so it does, to us, it's not worth the trade-off to like spend that much more time and go that granular. But for some people it is, right? If you're like a multi-million-dollar e-commerce company, like every single link position may really matter to you. And in that case, great, like UTM it.
I think what else is really helpful to say there too is that like it depends like on how I'm gonna put my Invisalign back in because I just realized I didn't, by the way. Sorry guys. I'm like, oh, I should have this in. Hold on. Okay. Welcome. So with what Jen is saying too is like with the like abandoned cart sequence as an example, we might UTM that and then track that for a while, and then we might back off of even paying attention to that too. So I think that's really important to say. Like, I feel like sometimes people think that once they start doing it, it means all of it needs their attention all the time. And again, that's why it gets really overwhelming.
Yeah.
And it's like, we might give that our attention for like a 3-month time span while we're studying like how to make that better or whatever. And then I would probably not look at that again for a really long time.
Yep.
So I feel like that's important to say too, is like, once you get into it, like, it's not like a thing where like now you are trapped in like information overload all the time. Lacey said, can you give a high level overview of how you use them on a social platform?
Yeah, I definitely can. Before I do that though, I want to say two things. So one, there are actually two quotes that come up for me, like when we talk about this, like the kind of putting in the prep first. And that's like that whole, like, if you have an hour to chop down a tree, spend 55 minutes sharpening the axe, right? Or like if you have to solve a problem, spend 55 minutes defining the problem and then 5 minutes solving it, right? So I think that's like a little bit of this.
That's so true.
And then the
problem one, but yeah.
Yeah. And then two, it's like just because you don't look at the information doesn't mean it ceases to exist. So like it is the benefit of setting it up is that it's there. Like that, like to what Lacey said, you do not have to look at it all the time, but it's so like powerful. Like even with what I was looking at last night, what I sent you, there's some data that we track around how long someone is on our email list before they purchase. That's not UTM related, but it's a data point we do not look at very frequently. But what's really nice is that we can. And so every like 6 months is kind of like the cadence at which I like to pause and just look at that to get an update, because looking at it every week doesn't make sense. Looking at it every month doesn't make sense. And so it's like super empowering because like we don't have to think about it, but when it becomes a question, we know we have that information that we can go reference and pull. And I think maybe I spent an hour last night digging through to get all of the different, and I sent Lacey this like long list of data that's not in our like normal dashboard for kind of 6-month trends for year to date. And I guess it's only 5 months, but I'm a psycho, so I went a month ahead. I guess I thought I saw June and I was like, oh no, it's the first
June.
yeah, like we're done. So but yeah, it was nice. It took me an hour. Like, and I feel like if people saw that list of data, they would be like, oh my God, this would be so hard and take days to pull this together. And like it was an hour. Do you know what I mean? And some of that, yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
I was laughing when you said the thing about sending me the email because I feel like that, like if people saw that email, I feel like they would be like absolutely mind blown. Not only because of obviously like what it tells us and what direction it points us in, but because I feel like no one in our space is making that stuff important enough too.
100%.
Right? Like they're not going, hey, it really matters how long someone's on your list, like to know about like how you might want to structure your funnel or where you might be losing buyers or whatever. Or even like what we found was so interesting in that is like many of our buyers aren't even on our list before they're buying. Well, that is like incredibly important and useful info for us, right? So that like really changes the trajectory of like how we might do some things and where we have gaps and all of that. So anyway, I just think it's so interesting and funny how much we resist that. But like you said, that it's still there. Like you can pretend it's not there. You can not look at it so you're not overwhelmed. But that those metrics are happening in your business, whether you want them to be or not. And so when you look at them, you actually have power, control, you know, all of the things that we high performers and high achievers like over what's happening versus if you weren't looking at them. Like if I wasn't looking at that, I know I would be doing entirely different things at Datable right now.
100%.
In fact, I often want to, like, I have a big desire to and pull to do other stuff. So does Jen.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
But like it's what keeps me going. No, 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 no. And I have to like talk myself off that ledge regularly. And I think just having the tools to do that is so important, which leads to like the social platform thing.
Yep.
Right? Is having the tools to know what's worth your time and what's not worth your time. So fucking important. Like for me, and then I'll have Jen go into that, but I'll just share a little bit of mine. You guys know that like probably in the last, what, like 8 months or so, I've like really doubled down on reels, and all of that. But here's part of the reason, because what was happening with them before is my team was taking stuff I was already doing and like repurposing them into a reel. Well, the amount of time that was taking and the amount of money that was costing me for my team to go use that, repurpose it, da da da, plus the amount of time it took in terms of like their time, their energy, etc. And then the amount of like traction and results, let's say, that was actually giving us, like, it just stopped making sense. And I can tell you now that it does take a bit more of my time for sure. But the time cost trade-off of that compared to the results, it's exponential. Like it just makes so much sense. So when I'm spending time on that now, I'm not like, oh my God, why is my team not doing this? Why am I spending time on this? I'm like, oh yeah, well, like I know the return on this time. So yes, I will happily spend 10 extra minutes to film a fucking lip syncing video today or whatever it is. So I feel like for me, just knowing that completely changed like how I want to show up in my business and what I feel motivated around and what feels worth it and what I spend my time on. And I just don't think most people have the information to do that.
No, I agree. Like, so, I mean, I agree so deeply because I live for this kind of stuff. Like for me, it's always been information is power, right? Like that's what's always given me confidence in any scenario is like being able to have it. Do I use it all the time? No. Do I still, but like, do I still have scenarios where I'm like, ooh, the data says this, but my gut really says this? Like 100%. I'm a human being and you have to weigh those things as appropriate for you, your business, your life, etc. But it's always for me given like really helped in terms of giving some like bumpers, right? Like to know like this is what to work. And also I think the other thing is like even when the data is not perfect, like with Reels, for example,
Yeah.
one fascinating thing that we saw when Lacey started doing more Reels is that our search traffic, our organic search traffic started going up. And I think we actually talked about this a little bit last time, but like we didn't say why, but or it's like, you know, our traffic source for Google organic, which is Google search traffic, all of a sudden started going up. And immediately, right? Because Lacey and I are normal business owners too. We were like, oh my gosh, like, why is this happening? And I'm like, oh, do we need to start blogging again? Like I used to love blogging, and I'm like already coming up with 900 strategies for like a content plan. But then we looked at the data and we were like, well, what are people searching? And they were searching Datable. And we were like, wait a minute. And then we looked at the timing of like when the search started going up, and it was the same time that Lacey started posting Reels. So people might be like passively consuming and they might like watch it scroll. And then later on in the day, be like, wait, I saw that thing. Oh yeah, it was Datable. And they're just Googling Datable. And so even when the traffic doesn't always like point perfectly to something like Reels, if you are documenting and kind of keeping track of when you are doing certain activities, which we were, then it's easy to start to go, oh, wait a minute, like this is actually that thing. And it could have been super easy for us to go, oh, well, Reels aren't working because it's not showing a spike for Instagram. But the reality was it's because it created this other spike over in Google search because of the way people consume.
And I think that's really important too, because for me, like that, again, that's what adds to the worth it feeling of doing Reels. It's like, I know that that's creating something else or some other movement or some other traffic instead of being like, not worth it. I'm not going to bother. Like, I think so many people are so quick to either stick with the same strategy that is objectively not working for a very long time. Like one of my clients messaged me today and said something like, well, this thing in my business is like not really getting me very many leads, and it's not been a great nurturing tool, and like no one's ever mentioning it when they sign up with me. So what can I do to make it better? I'm like, what if you just stop doing it? Like, right? And they were like, oh yeah, what if I just stop doing it? But we're so quick to like hang on to something because we feel like we're supposed to hang on to that thing, or we're so quick to like write something off. Like I tried Reels for 2 weeks, it didn't do anything, bye. And like the point of UTMs is to have a way to go, oh, this is doing something. Like maybe it's sending people to my page, but I haven't gotten them to convert yet. Okay, cool. That's what I need to work on next. Or like maybe this one way I'm talking about it in this one space seems to really work, but this other way I'm talking about it never works or whatever. Like Jen and I are always back and forth on like data Reels kind of thing. And we're always like, let's give it one more shot. But like pretty objectively, like they're not Reels that perform very well for us. Okay. It's like really helpful to know that because there are a ton of other ways for us to drive traffic.
Yep.
And so instead of just like spinning our wheels, I mean, we'll test it and we'll see and we'll give it some shots and then we're like, oh, but like we just are so neutral about it. Like I feel like that's when people go into that, like, I fucking hate Instagram, the algorithm, this or like, and it's like, if it's just neutral, like if you're just able to look at your UTMs, able to look at your data and be like, oh, that just doesn't perform as well right now. There's like no intensity around it at all. It's just like, well, let's just do something that does.
100%. Yeah. I mean, it's very freeing. Like, it doesn't mean it's not frustrating sometimes still because you're like, damn it, I wanted that to work, right? Like I wanted that to be the thing. But to your point, it's like, it doesn't feel like you're like, I don't know, like discouraged at all. Or I mean, it's very freeing because you can just go, okay, like then cool, then what can we try? Or how do we try to make this work? Like, what do we need to tweak about it? Right. Like, I just think it gives you so much power.
Something else that's really important about, I want you to answer Lacey's thing.
I will. Yeah, I know. I have it up right here,
fault.
like, so that I don't lose sight of it either.
Okay. So one other thing I want to say about this that feels really important as a lead into Lacey's question. I was on a call recently and with like a group of business owners, and someone was like, what data do you guys track for social? Like, give me all the data I should be tracking for social. And someone was like, oh, here's mine. Here's like this whole spreadsheet we keep or whatever. And I was like, you're not even tracking what's sending you traffic. Like, what are you doing? Like, your team is creating this whole complicated spreadsheet with like views and reach and all that. And not to say like reach doesn't matter or whatever, but like, I mean, they were writing how many comments, how many likes, all of this stuff. And they weren't tracking traffic at all. And I was like, what if you only tracked traffic? Like, wouldn't that be the only thing that would actually matter? Like, isn't that the entire point of everything you're doing on social media? Like, why does the rest of this matter if we're not looking at traffic? And everybody was like, oh, fair point kind of thing. And to me, it's so black and white. Like, I like looking at my reach, and like, I definitely sometimes get like a little bit of a high off of like having it go viral or be, but like, honestly, it doesn't matter unless you're getting traffic and sales from that. So to me, like all these social platforms that build in all this data for us, like it's nice, but it doesn't fucking matter unless it translates to someone wanting to buy from you, right?
I have so much to say on this because
Yeah.
I've seen this like so many times. I used to, when I first started in the online space, well, I've been in the online space since 2009. So I'm kind of like an OG. But when I got into the online space more in the sense of like online business operations type of work,
Yeah.
I was supporting predominantly bloggers because one of my previous lives online, I was a professional blogger. And so I knew that business model really well. I knew content marketing really well. That was just like my space. And so I spent so much time with bloggers that would be chasing down these numbers, and you're like, but like, that's not what we're trying to do here, right? And like, what is the goal, and how are these numbers helping us tell us whether or not we are? And people love to have reasons, right? Like, I mean, I have like this, I always joke to Brendan, my husband, that I have like a lawyer in my head, that like anything that comes out of my mouth, the little lawyer in my head like builds an entire business case around why it's wrong. And so like I can argue either side of anything and tell you why any metric could potentially contribute to the benefit of blah blah blah. But the reality is, like, to your point, we are selling things, right? And in order for someone to buy, unless you are truly collecting their, credit card payment via DM, which you probably shouldn't do if you are.
Yeah, which like definitely not.
Then like you are sending people somewhere, and that should be one of the core metrics that you are tracking. Like, it's just, I see people, especially with platforms like, which is not as popular anymore now, but back then with bloggers, Pinterest was like the worst culprit. And this is not a knock at Pinterest. I love Pinterest. It's great for bloggers, not a thing. The issue is that people were hiring Pinterest managers, and the managers would send them reports on like repins and likes. And it's like, cool, but you didn't share anything about traffic. And like, that's the whole point. Like, we are not sharing to be like the number one repinned content creator on Pinterest, right? Like, we are sharing to get people to go to our websites to therefore make a purchase or make money from ad revenue or whatever your business model is. And so I heard a quote this morning. I'm like so excited. And it says, your business metrics don't follow your vanity metrics. And I was like,
it's
oh,
totally
shit.
true.
It's
Oh,
so
damn.
true.
Wait, I have to grab that. Okay.
Yeah. And the other, and I can give you all the citations because
I'm going to send you a
doesn't
text to text me that.
I will. And hopefully this doesn't turn people off, because one of my favorite online like business people, Lacey knows I'm like obsessed with the Hormozis, which I know like they can borderline some of the kind of more bro marketing stuff, like a little bit. I don't consider them to be, but like in case you do, just know like I'm coming from a good place. Hi. But they're really smart. And what I like about their content is they're very data driven, which is like, I just like it. And so a video I watched, which I like definitely recommend to people on this topic. Alex posted a video this week about this woman, Lacey, this is going to like make your brain explode too. Not like, you won't be surprised, but she has 5,800 followers. She, her posts like on Instagram get like 19 likes. So imagine like, your person is like 5,900 followers is great, but that's not like, you see people with hundreds of thousands, right? So like, you wouldn't think that that's like a massive business she's running. She does one post a day. They get, again, around like 19 likes. She does one story a day. She is making $1 million a year exclusively from Instagram, because she is speaking exactly to her ideal customer. And so like, if she had this team with that spreadsheet you're talking about, and they were filling it in every month, it would look like she's doing, like, in her mind, right? She might think that's garbage. Like, I don't, mind you, everybody's getting like 19 likes on Instagram right now. That's why everybody turned their like counts off. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like, let's be honest, it's just the way the feed is performing right now. But yeah, it's like again, the vanity metrics do not mean like more followers does not mean they're making more money than you. More likes does not mean that they are making more money than you. You could get 14 likes and still be making way more money than the person that has 99 likes or 1,000 likes or whatever. And so I just like love hearing stories like this, because I just feel like it pokes a hole in things that like we put so much pressure on ourselves to like track certain things or hit certain milestones around numbers. And then we create this story that like we're wrong in some way. And then we blame the numbers, right? And it's like, well, I don't want to know because I'm going to find out I'm wrong. And it's like, actually, you could find out like where you're really, 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 really right and do more of that. Like, you know
Michelle
what I mean?
says she loves it when you go on a nerd rant. More please.
Sorry. I get like very,
Kevin.
I get very excited. We can relate to the 19 likes on posts too, though. Like,
Yeah. The interesting thing is, like, Jen and I have really made a pretty conscious, like, event towards the beginning. We focused on Instagram a lot. Then we took a really big break from it because we needed to get other stuff set up. Then we kind of decided, like, let's give it a shot again. And it's interesting because I'm like, I know how to get us reach. Like, Jen and I have done a few reels that got good reach objectively. Like, it doesn't matter, like, because those reels, we almost weren't quite talking about data. And so it did nothing for us, but like, I know how to get reach, you know what I mean? Now for other businesses, like reach might actually be vitally important. So don't get me wrong. Like if you're whatever, doing affiliate stuff and different things like that, sometimes reach is really a very strong indicator of like what direction you're tracking and how things are going to go for you. You need a certain amount of reach to get a certain place in your business sometimes. But the point is, like, that's why we're like, okay, like that we know how to get that, and we could vanity metric that all day on Datable, but it's not getting us the result we want. So it's not worth our time. And I think some people can't let go of that.
yep.
You know what I mean?
100%. And to me, again, that's so powering. And it goes toward like what you and I always talk about like when people go so hard on like, this is the way to do things, or this is what works. Like, again, that exact example, reach did jack shit for us, right? But to your point, there are businesses where reach really matters. And so I think it's irresponsible when people come out and say like, this is the thing, or this is the only way, or this is the only thing that matters, because it's like, that might not be the case, you know, like people that are influencers on Instagram, because I'll say it even with their own stuff, people who are Instagram influencers who use an exact Amazon link in their bio, it would make no sense for them to use UTM links, right? Because we can't put tracking on Amazon. Like, however, if they have a link in bio, I would argue, then yes, it's very important for them. But do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yes.
It's fascinating. And something that just gets me really frustrated, because I think people are so quick to be like declaring like what is and isn't a thing. And you're like, or we could just look at our data and see what works for our business and then do more of that and less of what's not. But like, okay.
And to me, like UTMs are one of the first places to start with that, and one of the best ways to do that because they're front of funnel. Right. So that's so important because it like you start the journey at the beginning. If you're just getting random ass pieces of your funnel, it's not all going to make sense. But if you can start at front of funnel, it does help. And then also because I feel like that's the most misunderstood for most people. Like when I look at data with clients, when we like really dive into stuff, I would say funnel data is not the most misunderstood in terms of like they have now entered our world. We're going to look at the funnel. But traffic, for sure.
100%. Yeah.
Okay, so talk about how we use it on social.
Yes. So first, I'm actually going to define a UTM parameter, because we told you all like what UTM stands for, which again, irrelevant. If you missed that part, you didn't miss anything exciting. But we never actually said what they were. And so what a UTM parameter is, it's a little bit of text. So despite what people think, they think it's like this code, scary thing. It is in a certain format, but it is just text that you add to the end of a URL when you are sharing it. So for example, that might look like getdatable.com/UTM_source equals Jen. I'm making this up, right? If I told you, that would be the source of data. That's what a UTM parameter looks like. It does not change where the person lands. They still land on the page that you were intending them to land on, but everything after the question mark gives data to Google, and based on how you format it, which we show people, or if you Google it, you can find, that's what tells Google what to put where, right? Like put this as the source of data, and put this as the medium, which is the type of data, and put this blah, 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 right? There's 5 main components, parameter types. And so that's what they are, just to like ground people, because I know Lacey asked the question and she knows what UTM parameters are, but I wanted to make sure that those that are here and they're like, cool, but you still haven't told us what it actually is. Yes, it's
Michelle
like
said
basically kind
UTM
of
links are
affiliate.
basically affiliate links for sites. It's all track it.
Yeah, it's very similar, like very similar. So so that's what they are. And then in terms of how to use them on social, so it really depends on the platform. Actually, I'm in the process of updating. We have an entire program on this called Tag Your Traffic. And I just went rogue like 3 weeks ago and wrote an entire book, and had it published. So
This is my life. She's not kidding. She just texted me one day and was like, I wrote a book. I'm like, okay.
yeah, literally,
Sounds
like
good.
I actually just resubmitted it this morning for like official publication on Amazon. So I'm waiting to get the confirmation because I finished all the edits. But all that to say is, like, in our program Tag Your Traffic, we have a guide that's like breaks it down by platform, and that's getting updated like in the next week or two, just based on what I had to do for the book. So I just give that caveat. I am going to answer, but it does vary by platform. So I'll just pick a platform. So let's go with like Instagram, right? So on Instagram, the way you would use them is you would create a UTM link that would tell Google the traffic came from Instagram, and Instagram is social media. So we're going to have it be Instagram and social. So it'll get kind of tagged. That's why we call it Tag Your Traffic, with those 2 pieces. Now, if you're putting the link in your bio, then I would probably set it also to show that it's the bio link, because then you can filter that way. If it's in a story, you can make it story. If it's a post, now technically, those of you know, like, you can't put a link in posts, but some tools have that. You'll see it a lot with affiliate, like with influencers. They have like a tool that when you click on their link, it takes you to like another version of their feed, and you can click on each picture. So like you would tag those as post if you had that kind of tool. But it's basically a way, that's how you do it. So it's just, you use like a UTM builder, and you can enter the link you're trying to send them to, pop in those parameters, it would generate the link for you, and you would just post it in those places. So typically, like for, again, Instagram, we just do the link in bio, really is ours. Like even when we were doing stories, like unless it was something really specific, we weren't always taking the time to UTM stories, just because at one point, like, there was a lot of stories and it was like that would be too time consuming. So you just track by platform, not every post. No, we do post that. It depends. Instagram's unique because you can't actually put links in each post. The only way you can do that is if you use a special tool, kind of like link in bio or link within, or any of those ones that are like, that create links for each post in a separate thing. Like on Facebook, we absolutely would. Like there would be a UTM link for each post. It would even say which post in which group, like with what details. So that's why I just again, every platform is different. I just happened to pick one where you can't do posts. But you could do it for stories. Like you could say it was the story I did about, this t-shirt. If I'm a t-shirt company, like it's the t-shirt with the cats on it. It was the story I did about a t-shirt with the cats on it. And you would know it was from Instagram, social, stories. You were selling a t-shirt and it was the one with cats on it. Like,
I love for clients being able to differentiate personally. I mean, not for every client, again, obviously to Jen's point, it depends, but by and large, I really love when we can differentiate between, is stories sending our traffic, or is your feed sending us traffic more? Like, are they clicking in your stories, or are they going more to, like, they like something, they click on your profile, then they go? The reason I feel like that's really helpful is because what I see working the best right now on Instagram, in terms of like holistically, if we look at like all, like reach and some vanity metrics and traffic, is to sell in stories way, way, way more than you're selling in your feed. I don't think that always was true, but I think it is right now. And so a lot of people get weird about that though, because they're like, oh my God, I can't just sell in stories. I need to sell in my feed a lot more. People may not be seeing it. And being able to actually see that differentiated of like, actually, you don't have to sell in your feed. It's still sending traffic. But when you sell really well in your stories, it does this. And so it kind of really helps to help like that mindset shift, to see like, what does what for you. Like what I notice with mine is I don't have to sell at all in a reel to still get traffic from that. But when I make a very clear like pitch or something like that in stories of like, get on our wait list, like obviously that's going to work too. And so being able to see how those both send traffic, but in different ways, and to be able to see kind of like the breakdown of what that looks like, very useful.
Yep. Yeah. Again, it all depends. Like I agree. And I agree.
Yeah.
Like for me, we're in a unique spot because again, Instagram is a platform that it hasn't really like been one that data resonates on. At least I'm sure we could figure it out, but to us, it hasn't been worth the work because we know what is working. So we do more of those things. But yeah, like if I were telling someone generically to start out, I would be trying to cast as wide of a net as possible on the activities that I spend a lot of time on, because I would want to be able to know, like, if I'm spending volume on this, then that means I can get a ton of data really quickly. And so I would want to get that data. And then again, you may be like, you know what? It's not worth it for me to keep doing it in this, but it is worth it for me to do it on this, in which case, that's what you should do.
Yeah. Like, for example, if you're like, say you're someone who's like, oh, I really want to test like posting in other Facebook groups, UTM the fuck out of every single post and track that for a period of time until you feel reasonably certain that like X works and Y group is worth it and Z thing is like beneficial to you. And then maybe do that for a period of time without having to have as much tracking behind it. But at least you have these periods where you know what's worth your energy. To me, like that is everything in your business. Like, I'm making a new thing right now for Datable, which I'm excited to share with you guys eventually. But I was writing about it yesterday and I was like, the thing that is so important here is not just about like, oh, okay, you'll have information. It's like, it's what all this information gives you. You have better decision making, you have increased efficiency, you have more growth, but you also have reduced waste. And I think that that's so important too. Like Jen was saying, if you're spending a lot of time on something, if you don't know if it's worth it, like that is crazy. Like, what things do we do in life where we can't say, like, yeah, that was pretty worth it? Do you know what I mean?
Yes. I always compare it to weight loss or like dieting, because again, that's just like such a good go-to. But like if you were really trying hard to lose weight, the people who are most successful are ones that are tracking everything. And that is because when you're tracking it, you are giving it attention. You also are seeing what's working and like the things that work, how it impacts it, and the things that don't, how it doesn't, right? And so like if you found that the days you eat chocolate, I'm going to make this up because I would like this to be the true world for us. But like if you found the days that you don't eat chocolate cake, you gain weight, you're going to eat the chocolate cake, right? And you want to know that so you can keep eating chocolate cake so that you can keep losing weight, right? Like let's all just manifest this for ourselves. But like I just think it's so important. I also think like, and this might sound contradictory to things that I say, but stick with me, because while this is not what I personally would do, even if you only did it for part of the year every year, like even if you just learned this stuff so that you could implement it, let's say like you're like, I really hate numbers, I really want to be able to like make my decisions based on like my intuition and how I want to run my business. Great, spend 2 months a year then.
Yeah,
just
truly
tracking deeply and getting that information so that you have that snapshot, so that you can say, okay, great, the decisions we're making, these are working awesome for us. Oh, look, this thing's actually working really well. Like, let's do more of that. Or like, hey, ooh, we spent a lot of time like, setting up XYZ lead magnets and they're actually not getting any people. Like, do we want to keep spending time dumping traffic into those and promoting those and whatever? Like, I just think it gives you so much power. And again, it does not need to be an all the time thing. Well, yes, I do recommend it. I generally speaking, recommend it all the time. Like, even if you were to baby step into it and just do 2 months a year, like you would be fascinated by the amount of information that you can get that will help you make decisions. Like Lacey shared earlier, we found actually it was 60% of our sales come from either people who were not yet on our email list or people who had only been on our email list for less than 30 days. So it was like 30% were not at all. 30% had been on our list for less than, actually, I think it was 35 and 35. It might have been
really glad I'm writing all those emails. No, I'm just kidding. But right? Really,
but then
like
it's also
that can change.
Yeah. So then it's also like, well, what do we need? And maybe we need to go harder on like our onboarding sequence, right? Like if we're getting
Mhm.
that many people that convert in the first 30 days, it's like, cool, maybe instead of you writing like the biweekly email, maybe instead we have you write like, use that same time, but like you're adding emails to our sequence, right? Like,
Exactly.
and this is exactly how we make these kinds of decisions, is like we look at the data and we're like, ooh, what could we try? And then we might try it. You guys might be like, wait, where'd their emails go? Now you just figured it out. But then we might realize, you know what, that actually didn't do anything. And people liked the emails, and that's, did keep our 20% going or whatever. So I just think it's I think it's so powerful and like empowering. And it just feels like when business can otherwise feel like so much is out of your control because we don't write these algorithms and we don't like get to decide when Instagram's going to make a big change or an affiliate program is going to change their commission structure, or whatever thing that is your business is relying on. Like what we can control is the information that we have, and then the actions we decide to take from that information.
It's so true. One last thing I wanted to share, because I know we have to like wrap in just a second, but one last thing that I wanted to share, because I just feel like it's helpful to hear the other side. But we have a student client who's in Measure and Maximize, who we kind of have a bit of a personal friendship with, and they have like a very large business. And they were in a launch, and I got kind of like a 911 message on like a Friday night, and they were like, our UTMs aren't working. We are in it. We really need your help. They're like, we're so sorry to be calling in a personal favor, but like for real, can you help us? And these are people who are not boundary crossers or bad clients. They are amazing. And so I share all that to say, like, at a stage of your business, this feels like breathing. Like, to launch without this level of data, I mean, it like is such a mind fuck. But what's interesting is a lot of people don't talk about how much they're using this. And so I just share that to say, like, probably a lot of the 7 and 8 figure businesses that you're looking up to that run really systematically, that do ads, that launch, are using UTMs. They're just not talking about it because they're not selling it. I mean, obviously that makes sense, right? But like, I just say that to say, like, I know it can feel really triggering to use them, but once you start using them and have that level of data, you will 911 that shit if you think there is some way that you cannot get it, because you see how meaningful it is to your results. You see how it drives every decision you're going to make. And to feel like you'd have to go back to making decisions without that is like insane, right?
100%. 100%. And I know you had mentioned ManyChat to me too before this call, and I totally spaced on that one, but you can track them with ManyChat too. Like we have all of our UTMs set up so that the link that is shared by ManyChat is a UTM'd link. So even in that scenario, not only do we know it was Instagram, social, like ManyChat, we even know like what was the theme of that ManyChat thread? Like, was it because they commented this word, or was it because they commented that, or was it this path? Like, you can go as deep or as shallow as you want to go. And
what I like about what you just said that's important, Jen, is to me, UTMs is what makes all of this talk and make sense. So you're not just looking at ManyChat's data and then separately trying to look at some Instagram data and then separately trying to look at some Facebook data. Like, UTMs can put this all into one place for you. So you're like, oh, this all makes sense together, which I think is what most people are missing. There's like, they can get bits and pieces of it, but there's not a way that it all makes sense together. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
Yeah. So good.
No, absolutely.
Okay. So if you commented today, you're entered to win Tag Your Traffic. If you just want to buy Tag Your Traffic, you can do that. I'll put a link in. It's just like UTM's 101, basically, how to use them, how to get started. It's super affordable. It's like the place to start. So even if like it's under $100, like even if you're like, I don't know, do I want to use this? Do I not? Just watch it and learn like a bit about how you could use this in your business. Use it on the smallest level. Like, I'm positive that it will pay off for you exponentially. Like Jen said, even if you just do it for like a month or something like that. So I'll put maybe I'll have Jen
put the link in because I want to UTM it. So
I was literally just going to say, because I was just going to type it and Jen will be mad at me and it will completely go against everything we just talked about today. So Jen will put the link in. But if y'all have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. I love you, Jen. I'm so grateful to you. Thank you for your genius and your brilliance.
Thank you for having me again. This is like my favorite thing.
Yay. All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.